Hiya, I'm Sparkles, and welcome to the video. Now I know what you're thinking, this is just going to be me drawing Guinevere in different Disney princess outfits. But you are wrong, as I'm going to base her outfits on the original fairy tales, or at least the ones that have been adapted many years before the ones I'm basing her off of. It's more like Guinevere in these stories and how I think they would design her to be these specific princesses. Really, it's me drawing Guinevere in a lot of princess outfits, which I can't see a single reason to not find that entertaining. After just the pilot of the show, I was mesmerized. And I must show my love for this show by doing exactly what the bad guys were doing and making a ton of Guineveres. Except I'm not making a mass amount of waste to do so. The first fairy tale princess I wanted to Guineverify was Cinderella. I think Cinderella is going to be a lot of fun with the glass slippers and the magic dress. A classic fairy tale princess. So let's get into making princess dresses. The story of Cinderella has existed since at least 7 BC, where it was originally about a Greek slave in Egypt who eventually marries the king of Egypt. However, most people know Cinderella from Disney or the Brothers Grimm, so we'll stick to that adaptation for these designs. Some differences with the Disney version most are familiar with have major deviations, with the tree next to Cinderella's mother's grave giving her the dress, then a fairy godmother, with which at first the dress is silver and gold with silk shoes, not glass, and then the next 2 days Cinderella's dress gets even more grander with each day of the party, with the final day having gold shoes. So using these deviations to add to Guinevere's Cinderella dress had to include some tree-like aspect, as well as the silver and gold dress with gold shoes instead of glass. I went for a more Rococo era of fashion for this dress because I feel like it fits for the final day of a 3-day party. Also, Rococo dresses are so pretty and elaborate, and I really wanted to draw one on Guinevere. I make the rules, who cares? I made the main dress gold with tons of silver and pink accents to make her gray skin not blend with her silver on the dress. And the pink was a nice pop of color that was necessary for this design. On the base of the skirt, I added silver leaves to pay homage to her mother in the story that gave her the dress. The excess of this era of fashion loved detail to the nines, so it was definitely needed. Giving her a mask also made sense for Prince Charming not to fully see her face at this extravagant party, so her wicked stepmother and stepsisters don't spot her, and so when eventually the prince finds the shoe, it's easier to just use that shoe to base off of who Cinderella is, because he didn't see her face. Obviously, I made the drawing of Guinevere hold up her dress to give us a little sneak peek at her gold slippers. How scandalous. But it looks like it seems one is missing. Who knows where the other slipper is? I'd say the hardest part were the details on the dress, since there's so many. However, I do think it came together pretty well. And here we have it. Cinderella Guinevere. I'm really happy with this one. I know it's only the first princess, but it's my favorite design out of all of them. All of the details work so well together to make it an amazing princess design. Now 1 down, 3 more princesses to go, and our next princess is Rapunzel, which by the way, was my favorite fairy tale and Disney movie. As a kid, I would read the story and watch the movie over and over and over again, although that's not the adaptations I'm using for this. Disney's version is much more different than the Brothers Grimm fairy tale, as a normal couple who have a baby on the way, and the wife is craving Rapunzel, which is either a flower or a type of lettuce from a garden that just so happens to be maintained by a witch. When the husband climbs the tower to get it, the witch eventually catches him and agrees to give him the Rapunzel if he sacrifices his baby to the witch, which he eventually does. The witch takes the baby and names her Rapunzel and keeps her in her tower until the prince finds Rapunzel and they fall in love. But when the witch finds out about this, she cuts Rapunzel's hair and banishes her into the woods, while the prince becomes blind when he's thrown out of the tower and his eyes land on the brambles surrounding the tower. They eventually find each other and live happily ever after, which is a lot. Unlike Cinderella, there isn't much about Rapunzel's outfits in the fairy tale, so we'll have to improvise this. However, I do want to incorporate that flower Rapunzel is named after and make her dress green to homage her name, meaning cabbage. For her massive hair, I gave her this bubble braid inspired by the two buns on her head normally, and in that braid there are these little purple flowers that are Rapunzel flowers. I went for a much less glamorous outfit for this Guinevere since she isn't technically a princess, but I still wanted it to be pretty since it is Guinevere, and in this universe she needs to sell toys and dolls and dresses and all that. I went for something a little bit more Middle Ages, giving her this loose and flowy outfit with some details, leaving her hair to be the star of the show. The highlights of the drawing were really fun, with all of her hair and elaborate braids. If I'm going to be honest, there isn't much to talk about this design. I suppose the lack of extreme details is a factor in this and probably the reason why it's the most simple out of all of them. But here is Rapunzel Guinevere in all her glory. With everything I said about this design being hard to make commentary about, I do like its simplicity. It just all works together very nicely, but is so hard to talk about. Our third princess to Guinevereify is Snow White. This fairy tale doesn't differ too much from Disney. However, it does start with Snow White's mother pricking her finger and wishing to have a girl with skin white as snow, lips red as blood, and hair dark as ebony. I think the blood is supposed to convey a wish being granted, but it's a little unclear to the one I'm summarizing. Eventually, Snow White's mom dies, and Snow White gets an evil stepmother with a magic mirror that when Snow White is 7, the mirror tells the queen that Snow White is the fairest, which is certainly a writing choice. You know the rest. One day, she tells her huntsman to kill her. He doesn't. Snow White runs into a cottage with 7 dwarves. The evil queen transforms into an old lady to get Snow White to eat a poison apple, and she dies. What does differ is when the prince arrives, he actually gets a servant to carry her casket, believing her to be dead. However, the servant drops Snow White's casket, dislodging the apple, saving her instead of the prince. When the prince and Snow White do get married, the evil queen attends. However, the prince's mother is furious when finding out what she did, and her punishment was to wear hot iron slippers and dance until she's dead. So in the end, Disney for the most part was pretty faithful to the original story, minus the iron hot shoes and the no corpse kissing. Guess Walt really wanted that kiss. While like Rapunzel, this story doesn't describe her dress. However, there is a lot of imagery to work with, like the apple and Snow White's looks entirely. I did decide not to change Guinevere's hair because there's no way they would change her look that drastically for a fairy tale. You have to sell those merchandise and you gotta be consistent. So instead, I used the black and white and the red of Snow White's supposed appearance for the dress. Unlike Rapunzel and Cinderella, she is an actual princess, so giving her a more princess dress was a must. On the bodice, I added some apple seeds for the extra detail to enhance her more simple dress. All in all, beautiful dress. Not much to say, unfortunately, but here is Snow White Guinevere. Oh my god, she looks gorgeous. I wish I looked like her. Our final princess is Sleeping Beauty. Now, I will say, like Cinderella, there are so many adaptations of Sleeping Beauty, but like I said, we're going with the Brothers Grimm because of its popularity. In the Brothers Grimm's version, instead of 3 fairies, it was 12 wise women. However, they didn't invite the 13 wise woman, so she gives Briar Rose, the Sleeping Beauty, a curse. However, the wise women turn it into a sleeping spell for 100 years. Briar fulfills this curse eventually at age 15, and everyone around the castle falls into a deep sleep as well, with tons of brambles covering the castle walls. Many years later, after Briar pricked her finger, the prince came and saved her with a kiss, saving everyone else from the curse. Honestly, probably one of the more wholesome Brothers Grimm's fairy tales, especially since there are so many worse adaptations of this specific fairy tale. If you know, you know. Now, using the imagery of roses and thorns to create Sleeping Beauty Guinevere is a must, since the brambles grow during the sleep, which is the whole point of the story. I also added roses in her hair when she was sleeping all that time. They grew into her hair, which is why it's so wild every which way. The gown itself has a lot of rose embellishments on the trim of her dress and sleeves. Speaking about the gown, it's almost like a nightgown because I feel like it would clearly indicate which fairy tale princess she is as opposed to the billion other Guineveres. Like Cinderella, this one was so much fun to do with all the little details, but admittedly it is pretty darn difficult to do. Finally, here is the final Princess Guinevere Sleeping Beauty edition. I really love the flowy lines of the whole drawing conveying her laying down. I was initially kind of nervous about her sleeping like that without making it look pretty flat, but I'm glad it turned out pretty well. Now, this was a really fun idea to do, and I hope you guys liked it as well. Honestly, I can't see anybody not enjoying a bunch of princess drawings. Please comment below which Guinevere was your favorite. I would love to know which one was your favorite. Personally, mine was Cinderella Guinevere, but you guys already know that. Now, I will see you guys in the next video. Bye!